Welcome to the podcast Growing Older with Gusto. I am Gail Zugerman, your host. Growing Older with Gusto is a podcast dedicated to people who are showing the way of growing older in a positive and productive way. Today, we have a return guest who keeps on being a great example of growing older with gusto. Peter Rork is a retired orthopedic surgeon who turned his passion for dogs and animals and cats and flying into a wonderful enterprise that keeps on expanding. He is a founder and chief pilot of Dog Is My CoPilot, Inc., an organization that transports both cats and dogs who are living in overcrowded shelters to their welcoming families. So, welcome to the show again, Peter. So good to see you.
Yes, thank you, Gail, for having me back. It's been a minute.
Yes, exactly. A fast minute. So, for folks, listeners who are new to the podcast, can you tell them a bit about how you got started with Dog Is My CoPilot? By the way, it's a great name.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. Of course, it's a play on words from the movie from the 40s, God is My Co-Pilot.
Okay.
I started this in 2012. I had just left my orthopedic practice, so I was just getting a little burned out by that. And the direction that medicine was changing, it was creating, it was no longer that much fun for me anymore. So I had a small aircraft and I had a rescue dog and I thought, well, this is something I could do to give back. So I started flying with the small aircraft and I would fly one or two animals at a time, really wasn't making much of a dent. I was introduced to a woman in the Central Valley of California who ran a nonprofit transporting dogs, and they transported them by ground. Walked through their shelters where they had a 94% euthanasia rate. So she was desperate to save animals, and she would put 20 or so in a van and drive them up to Portland, Seattle, Spokane, Denver, Salt Lake City. And these were like 12, 14, 16-hour trips. And, once the dogs are in the crate, they stay in the crate till they get to their destination. So I said, you know what, I can knock these flights off in 4 or 5 hours. So I started flying exclusively to her, but the receiving groups would also receive dogs from other locations. And so they asked me if I wouldn't fly to the other locations as well. And pretty soon I outstripped the size of my aircraft. So I scaled up and bought a Caravan, which is like the perfect aircraft for this mission.
So, tell us about the Caravan. I'm curious, what does it look like?
Well, it's still a single engine airplane, but it has a turbine, which is, measurably a stronger engine and about 3 times the size of the aircraft that I was flying.
Wow.
So I went from flying 20 dogs at a time. And the very first flight I did with that aircraft, I had 251. And we were very conscious about numbers at that time, the number of animals, but it really wasn't serving the needs necessarily of the sending and the receiving groups. So we stepped away from that completely. And now we let the senders and the receivers decide who needs to be transported and where. So we now fly anywhere between 60 and 150 animals at a time, depending on the size of the crates, because the crates will fill up the cabin of the aircraft long before we get overweight with the airplane. So we're now flying I went from flying about 1,000 animals a year. So now we're flying about 1,000 a month.
Wow.
And we scaled up about 10 years ago to the first Caravan. And I think I spoke with you a couple years after that. We couldn't really meet the need. So I went out and bought a second Caravan, and that really stretched our budget. We flew that for about a year, and then it was upended in a tornado down in Texas.
Whoa.
And wasn't completely destroyed, but it was sent off to the repair shop. And actually, 2 years later, yesterday was its maiden flight after the repair. Now, since we had already committed to flying for all these animals with 2 aircraft, I went out and bought a third, and that really emptied all of our coffers. So that was a tough time for us financially, but it was meeting the needs of the community. And it was always my plan to scale up and divide the country into thirds.
That was my next question. Okay. Because I was wondering, I know we spoke a few minutes ago that you were primarily in the southwestern part of the country. So, talk to us about how it's expanded geographically. Are you
Yeah. So initially, we would fly out of New Mexico, West Texas, and Southern California, and fly them up to Polson, Seattle, Spokane, and all the little airports in between. And one thing that we learned that when we scaled up, instead of me flying 20 dogs from the origin to the destination, going home and having a beer, if we were flying 100 or 150 animals at a time, no one group can assimilate 150 animals. So it would take 4 or 5 or sometimes even more groups to take all these animals. So that now started with 2 or 3 or 4 stops along the way, or 4 or 5 receiving groups at the destination. It takes a lot of coordination. And so we actually have a person dedicated specifically for that called our rescue flight coordinators, who will stay with the flight starting the day before, making sure everybody shows up on time and getting them to the airport, having the receiving groups at the airport on time. So we don't have to spend more than 30 minutes or so on the ground. So it was always my idea to scale up. Now we have the West Coast covered, bought the second aircraft and put it in the Dallas area. And then we had the central part of the United States covered. We're flying from Dallas and Texas, all over Texas, up to Wisconsin and
wow?
Minnesota, Illinois, uh, Iowa. I mean, all the states there. And it was our goal then to get a third aircraft and base it on the East Coast. And so basically, we're flying from north to south. And we fly the key to our success is that we don't do a one and done kind of flight. We fly the same flights and schedules over and over again. So the sending groups know, yeah, we're flying out a load today and they're going to be back in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So when we fly the same routes and we drop off the dogs, the next time we're in that city, the dogs that we had dropped off in those crates, the receiving group will wash the crates down, disassemble them, and then we load them back onto the airplane. So the crates are doing this merry-go-round on our flights all the time. So we never have to go through the purchase of the new crates. Now, part of that is that these crates can get old and broken down, and we will have on occasion a dog that will break out on a flight. And
Wow. Yeah.
it's the plane is like packed full with these crates. It's a huge Tetris game.
I'm curious.
And
So, tell us a little bit about, you know, well, I have things that came to mind. One is, how do you distinguish between the facilities that you decide are the ones that you want to work with? Because obviously you only have so many days in the year and so many planes. How does somebody stand out in your estimation for you to consider working with them?
well, what we ask is that the sending group fill the aircraft. That's not a problem. And finding the dogs to transport is not a problem because the municipal groups in the South are completely overrun. And they only have 4 options to them. They can adopt them out, they can foster them out, they can transport them out, or they can euthanize them. And we're working with groups that have euthanasia rates up to 40%. Now, now, the thing that makes me feel so good about what we do is that we've dropped their euthanasia rates by half by transporting these animals out. And the transport isn't getting the animals like 100 or 200 or 300 miles away. They can do that by ground. What we do, we'll fly them 1,000 nautical miles away. And these are groups that are well funded, the receiving groups. They have the capacity to take these animals in and foster them until they can be adopted out. And typically it takes about 3 weeks for them to offload the animals that we bring in. So 3 weeks later, we're bringing in another load. And some of these groups had worked with the receiving groups for a long time on ground transport. And what we did, we just substitute by air. So instead of spending 24 hours in a van, which many of them would do, I mean, if you
And
can
then
imagine,
I would imagine they might pick up diseases too on the ground, traveling.
it's not, it's tough for everybody because
Yeah.
even for the drivers, there's a huge sense of urgency because they don't stop every 3 hours and let these dogs out to pee.
Yeah.
Once they're in the crate until they get to their destination.
Oh, wow.
And, so it's really tough on everybody. And so we really made it a whole lot easier. And economically, we've been able, through economies of scale, to make it reasonable to transport by air. When I was with a small aircraft, it would cost us about $75 per animal per transport, which is still reasonable when you consider the expenses involved with getting the animals, getting them bedded, getting them spayed and neutered, bringing their immunizations up to date, housing them, paying the rent for the housing, et cetera. And we've been able to actually lower that through the economies of scale. So we've worked really hard at working with a finely sharpened pencil to keep those expenses low, because we don't want people donating to the nonprofit thinking that we're wasting their money. And really, our administrative costs are very, very small and narrow when you look at, the United Way and
Right.
other groups who administrative costs can exceed 50%
Right.
of all the money that they're getting. And you look at the salaries that their CEO is making. And so let me tell you about my salary. It's bupkis.
Yeah.
All right. I don't get anything out of this other than the
Satisfaction of what you're doing. It's amazing.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
amazing.
exactly. Now I do have a good team and they do like to make a living, but honestly, it's embarrassing what I pay them. I mean, it's just
Wow.
they do it. They do it because they want to do it. Ours is not a have to job. Ours is a want to job, and everybody steps up. They know that they're I take good care of the employees. We have, health insurance. We have a small 401k for them and that type of thing. But their days are long. Our pilots are in the cockpit from 5 a.m. until 5 p.m. Our rescue flight coordinators are up before that, making sure on the phone that everything is going well, texting with the pilot throughout the day to make sure that everything is staying on schedule. And then the next day, start it all over again. So we have aircraft in the air virtually every day of the week. It's we're very busy, a lot of moving parts, and we have a terrific executive director, Caravan, who does a great job running this whole thing. We have a pilot coordinator, Frank Maresca, who does a great job running this. So when I was doing it by myself, and then we expanded to the first Caravan, I couldn't do all the flights myself. But we were all volunteer at that point. Now with 3 aircraft, we can't fill it with volunteers. I'd have 3 full-time pilots. I'd have 2 going on 3 rescue flight coordinators. And we've had the executive director. And still, this is less than 20% of our budget. So, I mean, we run a and that includes whatever small amount of marketing we have. So, and if your donors will send a donation, I'll send them a license plate frame. This says Dog Is My CoPilot on it and a little magnet for their car so they can be, on TEDIMC.
Very good. So I'm curious, how is transporting different between dogs and cats? You mentioned you also transport cats. Is that true? Or
Yes, we do.
okay.
Well, here's the secret that in 2025, we actually transported more cats than dogs.
Oh, wow.
I'm not changing the name. The cat is my co-pilot, although Marcy is my partner, who's kind of a cat lover, but she loves our dog, Susie, rocking in the background. But the cats, it's interesting that the euthanasia rate for cats is much higher than it is for dogs.
Mm.
So if the receiving group will take them, we'll take them. And we can transport a lot more cats because of the size of the animal is very small, and those cat crates are very small. So, for the weight and balance of the aircraft, it works out really well because we could put them way aft in the aircraft and keep the heavier dogs up front, where it works out well for the airplane.
So, is that you have to balance the weight according to the weight of the dogs? How does that work?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah. It's part of the balancing act, because if we're making 3 or 4 stops, we have to make sure that we load the dogs in the reverse order that they're getting out, so we don't have to keep unloading and then reloading the whole aircraft. And so we have the crates color coded with a tag for their destination. And so it's easy for the pilot when we jump into the back of the aircraft at our first stop, say, okay, all the yellow tags get off here. We know that there are 14 crates getting off at this location. We count the crates and stuff. And the person who's the ground coordinator for that stop will then determine what receiving groups get what animals. And this is all done in advance by our rescue flight coordinators. I mean, they have a very busy job juggling all these balls.
This is a well-oiled machine you've created here.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And believe me, they benefit from every mistake that I've made in the past, by leaving the right dog at the wrong airport and the wrong dog at the right airport. It just, but our receiving groups are, they're terrific. I say if the dog is there and they have a health certificate, if they weren't supposed to receive it, they'll accept them. And this is the one point I want to make, is that when we get to these airports, everybody wants to talk to the pilot. Oh, you guys are, they're heroes. The heroes are the people who are working in those municipal shelters down in the South, who have to walk in there every day with an extremely limited budget and looking at these animals that they know that a certain percentages are not going to be, they're not going to get out of there. And they go in every single day and look at that, cleaning out the stalls, walking the dogs, socializing them, changing the water. I mean,
Wow.
It's an amazing job that they do. So, I mean, my hat is off to them. And if you go through a shelter, say down in Ellenburg, Texas, or down in Laredo, it breaks your heart to see that. It really does. And honestly, when Marcy was with me on the last flight, we picked up a couple dogs that came out of El Paso and one out of New Mexico, and she brought them home with us. And that makes our third rescued dog at home. And so it's just, she has we have huge hearts for that.
Of course.
Really,
yeah.
Rescue is my favorite breed. And I say, adopt, don't shop. And the other is it's hip to snip. So spay and neuter is really the answer to the problem here. And we would love to be put out of business, such as it were. But, it's a socioeconomic thing. People don't understand, and they don't have the funds for it. And even if they have free spay and neuter clinics, many times they don't have to get them. They don't have the money to even get to the locations that are offering these things. So these aren't bad people. Although I will say that this is not a dog problem. It definitely is a people problem.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's also kind of educating them too, I would think.
Education is key.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So let's chat a little bit about your network of partners. What is Petco's Love's network? What is that?
Petco Love is a foundation that is one of our donors. It's donated every year for the last 8 years or so. And honestly, when we were first starting this, most of the money came out of my own pocket. Now, the IRS will give you 2 years to show that at least 1/3 of the money is coming from elsewhere. So they're not looking at you as like a tax fraud kind of thing. So we were struggling, wondering how we were going to pay the credit card bill at the end of the month. And a lot of it came out of my own pocket. And then we got a phone call from Petco, and Petco said, "Oh, we heard about you guys. I've been watching you for about a year now, and really like what you're doing. We're going to give you our Love in Action Award." And I'm on the phone with them, with Kara, and I'm thinking, great, what am I going to do with a trophy? That's not going to help. And she says, "And we're going to give you $250,000. Well, honestly,
Wow.
I got goosebumps. Kara broke into tears. And it was the very first time we could see that maybe we could breathe a little easier at the end of every month. And Petco has been with us since that time. And if you look at our aircraft, it's kind of like a flying billboard. I mean, we have, a design with the dogs. Our logo is on the tail. Although recently I've noticed that other rescue groups are starting to copy our logo. That's imitation is the sincerest form of flag.
Exactly. It's what my mom always said.
Right. And so Petco is right on the nose art of our aircraft, just like the World War II bombers who would put a nose art on the front of their bombers and stuff.
Yep.
The Petco is right there. And if you'll notice, we have other logos that are on the aircraft now with other foundations that have stepped up over the years and give us a nice grant. Now, we still rely on donations. And the reason for that is I've built the organization with three goals. This is written into our DNA, like our prime directive, if I could borrow Star Trek, is that we only fly from not for nonprofits. We don't fly for somebody who wants to hire us to transport a dog from here to there. We only fly from the kill to the non-kill. If the animal's already in a non-kill shelter, they don't need our help.
Right.
And we never charge the senders or receivers. Never. So everything that we offer in our transport is free of charge to the senders and the receivers. So
Right.
as a 501c3, we rely heavily on the generosity of the people who want to be part of the solution, because you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. But we have a 7-figure budget every year, and it takes a lot of $10 donations to get there. But it's amazing how many people will get. Now, we couldn't do it without the foundations that you can see on our aircraft donating to us. But
So is that,
it's just,
but I was going to ask about the National Disaster Search Dog Foundation. What is that exactly, and how do you work with them?
I'm sorry, what
The
foundation?
National Disaster Search Dog Foundation?
Yeah,
No?
that's not one who
No?
is a big part of, no. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a lot of the other nonprofits that will fly dogs will fly in for the disasters and stuff and the TV cameras and stuff like that. But we're out doing the heavy lifting every single day. We're flying the same routes every day, and we really don't have the capacity at this point to absorb those occasional crises that occur with animals. And I'll tell you a quick story that I learned a couple of years ago, that there was a flood down in New Orleans. And so they had a lot of flood dogs that needed to be flown out. So they reached out to us, and I thought, okay, well, this is fine. This is what we'll do. And I had a couple of days of downtime with that. So I flew down to New Orleans, loaded up the aircraft, and flew them back up to the Pacific Northwest. Now, the problem was that about a week or 10 days later, the owners came to the shelters looking for their dogs.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, really, the key is to fly the animals out and empty the shelters before the crisis occurs. But who can predict that?
Right.
So
Wow.
it's kind of backward to go in and fly the animals out after the event has occurred. What they need is increased capacity to house these animals until the owners come looking for them again.
Yeah. So, what are some ways that people who might want to get involved with Dog Is My
Uh,
Co?
th- That
How do they
see,
reach out to you?
that's the key. Okay, well, they can reach out. They can go to our website, www.dogcopilot.org. No hyphen, all
Okay.
small, all lower letters. But there are 4 things that people can do if they want to be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're not contributing. So adopt, don't shop. For your next dog, go adopt an animal. We have 2 purebred animals in our household who are both rescues, a golden retriever and a black lab, and they are the best. Honestly, these shelter animals, they are grateful. So you can go and adopt, and better yet, adopt 2. I mean, because they become a bonded pair. They take care of each other when you're not around, and that works out very well. If you can adopt, and foster an animal. Get the animal ready to be adopted. Teach it how to socialize with other dogs, how to walk on a leash, how to not jump up on people when you greet them. Now, if you can't do that, then you can go down to your local shelter and you can volunteer. Sweep out the kennels, change the water, walk the dogs every day, change their food dish. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do. Launder their blankets. And if you can't do that, then you can donate. And you don't have to donate money. You say, well, I'm not sure what they're going to do with the money. Well, then buy a bag of dog food and drop the dog food up. Go to your closet and get those old towels and those old
Right.
blankets that you don't use. Drop them off, because they use them
Right.
in the shelters, and we use them on the transports too. So the volunteer, or you can, instead of donating time, you can donate money. I mean, It's amazing what
But
we can do with $5. It buys almost a gallon of Jet A, and we burn 45 gallons an hour. So we
yeah,
go through that pretty quickly.
I can
It costs
imagine.
us about almost $800 an hour to run the aircraft. And our typical flight from origin to destination is going to be about 10 hours. So that's $8,000. But if we have 100 dogs on board, that's $80 a dog. So, I mean, more. I mean, suddenly the
Do you
number drops low. So we pay attention to that so your money will be well spent if you'll trust us with it.
I believe that, and it's a great organization, but I have one more question. So when you pick the airports that you go into, are they close by the facilities where that are getting the dogs? And do you plan it that way? Do you coordinate it?
Absolutely. And most of the shelters they're larger municipal shelters. So
Okay.
they usually have an airport nearby, and many times it's a commercial airport. Now, we don't need a large airport to get into. We only need 3,000 foot of runway. We don't need 7 or 8,000 feet that the airliners use. So we can go into virtually any airport. But if they are a small rural community, then typically they'll have 3 or 4 rescue groups that work in that area. Honestly, in Texas, it's so terrible. People down there will just drive along a dirt road, push their dogs out, and
Right.
drive away.
Yeah.
And that just
Oh,
and so a lot of these dogs are picked up as strays. So the small communities are like peppered with these little mom and pop rescue organizations. They'll get together. We'll fly in. We'll have 3 or 4 groups meet us at the staging area, load up the aircraft, and off we go. And since we're transporting these animals interstate, many times from Texas up to Massachusetts or even Maine now, I mean,
wow.
or nationwide, they need a health certificate. And so the veterinarians who donate their time to give the animals a health certificate works through. So otherwise, perfectly healthy and adoptable animals that are going to be euthanized. And it's just a shame. When when we're loading the aircraft in the morning, these dogs are chirping at each other. You know, they're in the crates or lined up on the tarmac outside the airplane. And I'm looking at them, trying to play Tetris in my head. And how are we going to load these all? But once they're in the aircraft and I close that cargo door and then spin the turbine, that's sound these dogs have never heard.
Right.
And they've got to be thinking, is it going to hurt? Because
Right.
they've had such a terrible life
Right.
until that point. And honestly, our golden retriever, Willow, is just the sweetest dog. And it took 3 months before she could even look us in the eye. And
Uh,
now we can't keep her off the bed.
yeah.
So I mean, this is how long
Yeah.
it takes for them
Oh, that's
to get
nice.
used to it. You know,
Well, it's obvious you're so passionate about what you're doing, and it just keeps getting better and better. And it's been great catching up with you. It really has been. And
yeah,
I'm
thank you so much for the
yeah,
invite. This is great. It
yeah.
was great talking to you a couple years ago.
Thank you.
Please have me
Same.
back in a couple years. Let me tell you how we've
Absolutely.
come since then.
I'm
Get
sure you
this,
will be.
next week we're going to be flying our 48,000th dog.
Wow.
48,000.
Wow. That's
That
amazing. That's
it,
that is terrific. Oh God.
love to see them all in one place.
Oh, you have to get a big photo op for that one.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
have them walk by the camera and a dog's view. So that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
You're
for having
welcome.
me, and I hope your listeners want to be part of this fusion.
How can they not?
They probably already are. You know what? Because you run a great program. I love
Oh,
listening to it.
thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm going to end by saying that Peter Rork is a Cubs fan. So am I. And we're going to say, go Cubs.
Oh,
Right?
yes, we're having a little tough stretch right now. Anyway, so
Right.
www.dogcopilot.org.
Thank
You can go, you can see all the photos, you can see all the stories. There's a donate button there. And I would encourage you to become a squadron member where you just $10 a month we charge to your credit card. You won't even notice it. It doesn't even cost as much as a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. So, to my listeners, thanks for listening today. And remember to stay curious and to stay connected. Until next time.